And Bonds hits one high. Hits it deep. It is out of here. 7:56. Bonds stands alone.
Now Booker with Tucker on him. Throws it up for 8. Shot blocked by Antetokounmpo. What a block from Giannis.
17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan, open, Chicago with the lead.
Minute remaining. And they're putting Curry in the pick and roll, trying to get him on Irving. Irving and Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown.
We're sending it in, Jerome. That's for damn sure.
Yes. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Taproom Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Stacks on Stacks Flats. Joined with my man, Aaron Kidd. What's up, AK? How we doing tonight?
Jordan, what's going on, man? I'm doing well, except for I'm fucking tired of betting baseball, man. So I'm ready to chop up some football and get ready for football, man, because baseball's been extremely frustrating after a really hell of a good 3-week run for me. It's been a rough 10 days or so. But hey, we fight on tomorrow.
That's right. I was gonna say that's how baseball goes, man. I mean, you've been doing it long enough. It's just it's a crazy fucking sport, man. Like, you know, RIP to the people that have the A's tonight. Domingo Germán's out here throwing a perfect game, so you know, there's that. He hasn't been pitching that well all year. Sorry, I'm trying to find our notes from last week so I can get all our conference winners. Probably should have done that before. Oh well, I'll go through it later. Yeah, man, happy to be here. I'm excited to talk more college football, dude, because we are getting into that time of year, which is nice, which means, you know, we can stop betting baseball. Or slow down on betting baseball, which I've kind of done a little bit. I've been picking and choosing my spots the last week or so, but excited, man. AAC Conference this week, AK. Before we get to it, though, make sure to go to Tavour or download the Tavour app straight to your mobile device. Use promo code TAPROOM for $10 off your first purchase of $25 or more. Also, head on over to our YouTube page, youtube.com/@TaproomSportsPodcast. Subscribe, get notified when we go live. You can also subscribe to our Twitch, twitch.tv/taproomsports. We appreciate y'all for hanging out with us. We had people hanging out on the stream last night. It was a fun stream last night. If you are in the chat tonight, let us know you're here. Ask us any questions. We'll be more than happy to answer them. But this show is strictly about the AAC Conference. And AK, like we talked about last week, with Conference USA, a lot of new teams in this conference and a lot of old Conference USA teams are now in the AAC. You know, what's your overall like outlook on the AAC before we dive into the teams?
I will say, Jordan, to your point about our show last week, I'm very, very close on pulling the trigger on Western Kentucky to win the Conference USA.
You still haven't done it?
Plug from the show last week, but to answer your question, man, it's kind of like you said, Conference USA. It almost feels like when I'm kind of breaking this conference down, I'm breaking down Conference USA. You know what we're accustomed to seeing. But hey, despite all the changes, man, you still got Tulane coming back. I know a lot of people are going to look for them again this year after their kind of breakout year. Shout out to them, man. What they did from 2021 to 2022, that turnaround is unbelievable. Conference USA powerhouse UTSA, they're coming to town now. I know they want a shot at New Year's Six Bowl. And I'm gonna be honest, I'll probably be looking to spots to fade Tulane and UTSA some this year. So we'll talk about that later in the show, and maybe even have another dark horse for you.
Hold on, you're not big on UTSA this year?
It's not that I'm not big on UTSA. It's just all you got to do is scroll through the wonderful platform Twitter, and you'll see that everybody just thinks Tulane and UTSA is just going to run the table in this conference again, and I'm not sure that's the case.
Yeah, I definitely think Tulane's going to take a step back. I mean, they lose Tajay Spears, and we'll get into that later. But I definitely think of the team that is going to take a step back, it's them. I also think it's hella difficult when you go into a new conference. You know, sometimes it is a little bit more difficult of a schedule. I do think a lot of these teams in this conference, the schedule breaks in their favor. Where, you know, I think there's 5 really good teams in this conference, and a lot of those teams, they get to play, you know, all the good teams in that conference, they get to play them at home, most of them. So it's going to be an interesting conference for sure. So let's just dive right into it. For those that are new to the show, we go through every single team in the conference, their win total, division odds, and, you know, if we like something, you know, we'll put a bet in, and then at the end of the show, we'll give you our best bets for the division. Last week, AK was all over Western Kentucky. He hasn't got to the window yet, but he did like the over 8.5 wins. Irvin was on the over 8.5 Western Kentucky wins and over 6.5 for Louisiana Tech. And then I am high on UTEP over 5.5 wins, and I took them plus 1,400 to win the conference as well. So little long shot there, sort of say. So let's talk about the first team here in the AAC, and it's the Charlotte 49ers. Charlotte is moving over from Conference USA into AAC. They haven't really been a good football team. They were 3-9 last year. They have a new coach, Biff Poggi, which is interesting tidbit here, AK. Biff Poggi is a former hedge fund investor who's now a head
high
coach.
school football coach.
Yeah, and now he's the head coach of the Charlotte 49ers. He's a little bit older. He did say during this offseason that he wasn't looking to have a slow turnaround, like he's looking to make a bowl game right away. Not sure it's going to happen. But what's your outlook on the Charlotte 49ers here?
Well, I mean, he definitely attacked the portal hard. He got over 30 players out of the transfer portal, so he definitely hit that hard. They got a former Michigan Wolverine guy that plays on the edge. It should be pretty good. But, I mean, you're talking about a team that gave up almost 40 points a game last year. They got a lot of work to do on the defensive side of the ball. You know, I know they like both running backs, Cedric Byrd, who they get back from last year. They love the true freshman, Darrell Robertson. So I think they're going to try to, you know, attack the ball on the ground. But pretty much all their best 3 receivers from last year are also gone. So quarterback room's a little uncertain too. So I'm definitely not too high on the Charlotte team. That's for sure, Jordan.
Their total's at 3.5 now. It actually opened 2.5. It's been bet up to 3.5. This is via BetMGM. And then their odds to win the conference, longest shot on the board, you can get it plus 20,000, which is at DraftKings, and then the lowest is at FanDuel plus 10,000. So kind of all over the place. If you like Charlotte to win the division or conference, definitely shop around because there's a lot of different prices out there. I'm kind of with you though, AK. Like, I do think that they brought in a lot of good transfers, but they're all have to like go through this new system, and like obviously Poggi, like he comes from Michigan, right? So they're gonna be a heavy run oriented offense. They lost like all their offensive line and brought in 8 transfers on their offensive line, dude. So it's like whole new offensive line. Jalen Jones, obviously, right now he's probably going to be their starting quarterback. He's a transfer from Bethune-Cookman. He's a very athletic quarterback, but not that accurate. 59%. In college, you want like 60 plus. So it's going to be an interesting. I don't know how to bet this team for the simple fact like we have no idea what they're going to be. And I think that's the most difficult thing. They open at South Carolina State, then they go to Maryland, then they get Georgia State at home, then they have to go to Florida, and then to SMU. I mean, easily they could be 2-3, maybe even 1-4 after that, right? And then Navy, they get at home. I think Navy's going to be a little bit better this year. At East Carolina, I'm not high on East Carolina. They lost a lot of people this last year, so, you know, but they got to go to East Carolina. East Carolina packs their stadium. They always fill that stadium like 55,000 people plus, so that's a tough place to play. Then they get FAU at home, at Tulsa, Memphis, Rice, and USF. So I like them to win 3 games about, maybe even 4, but I'm not willing to play over 3.5 because I could see them winning 1 or 2 games too.
Yeah, and it's always tough back in a head coach, first-year head coach that really just comes from the high school ranks. I know he had a couple little stints in Michigan, but yeah, I'm not looking to get in on that win total.
All right, let's move over to the USF Bulls. They are at 4.5 games. We have like quite a few teams in this conference that are at 4.5 games. Again, this is via BetMGM. So if you like any of these, obviously go shop around. There's different prices. Some of them could be 5 and juiced, less. So USF, again, another first-year head coach here, Alex Galesh. He comes from Iowa State. He was a tight end coach under Matt Campbell. What's your outlook on the USF Bulls? They were 1-11 last year.
Yeah, well, also Jordan, he comes from Tennessee, so he kind of got Josh Heupel in that offense up and going the last couple of years. He was actually the offensive coordinator for Tennessee the last, I believe, 3 years. So we know what kind of offense he's going to try to bring. We're talking about a team that didn't win a game in the AAC last year, so I don't see them being another Tulane by any means. They've got some uncertainty at the quarterback position too. Some pros though about UCF. They're probably going to have the best left tackle in the conference and Donovan Jennings. So, when you've got that foundation piece, you can always build around it. I know they got a new defensive coordinator as well. When we talked about Charlotte, man, Charlotte allowed almost 40 points a game last year. We're talking about a team that allowed almost 42 points per game last year. So definitely got to turn around on the defensive side of the ball. And Galesh is going to come kind of bring that Josh Heupel style offense. They're going to run a high tempo, throw it around the yard type offense. So take some time to get that kind of system going.
Yeah, they lost their top receiver. They bring in a few transfers though, but they're not very experienced. This is a not very experienced offense. They do have Jerry Bohannon at quarterback, who's like in his 100th year of college football. So I mean, you do have some experience there, but he's got to stay healthy. He wasn't able to stay healthy last year, so we'll see what happens there. Again, defense, like you mentioned, I think that's a huge question mark. But they did get some big transfers from Florida, Texas, and TCU. So they do actually have some talent. It's just, will they gel in time? I think that's the biggest question. For their schedule, they open at Western Kentucky, then they go Florida A&M, Alabama. They get Bama at home, surprisingly. And then they have Rice at home. And then they go to Navy, to UAB, then they get FAU at home, to Connecticut, to Memphis, Temple at home, at UTSA, then they get Charlotte at home.
And Jordan, they haven't said that it's actually a pretty open competition between Jerry Bohannon and Byron Brown. And I know they really like Brown because of his athleticism in that offense. It's kind of the Hendon Hooker type, if you will, that Galesh is going to be looking for. So I won't be too surprised if you see Byron Brown under center a lot this year for them as well. Definitely not a team that I think may be a dark horse as well. I think Galesh is going to be a good head coach. I just think it's not this year. We're a couple of years away.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a longer rebuild than we expect. So I lean under 4.5 on their win total, but not going to get to the window with that one either. All right, let's move over to the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. Another first-year head coach, 7th season overall though, and Kevin Wilson. He's coming off being the offensive coordinator at Ohio State, but he has a big job here at Tulsa. They're 5-7 last year. They haven't been very good for a while. This team has to be basically completely rebuilt, and it's basically what he's doing. He's starting from the ground up. What's your thoughts on Tulsa here at 4.5, AK?
If I was forced to play this, I actually kind of like the over, to be honest with you. Good old JT Daniels, who's just becoming a household name at every university.
No, he's at Rice. He's at Rice.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
That Rice is
Got-
another 4.5 win team, 4.5
Yeah.
win total team though. Tulsa Golden Hurricane.
Yep, Tulsa. That's another team that you made a joke with me earlier about. Tulsa doesn't need to be in the FBS. They need to be in FCS.
Yep.
I will say, man, Braylon Braxton is a name to listen for in this league. I think he's got some good potential ahead of him. Kind of like them last year. They get Anthony Watkins back, the running back who missed some time last year because of injury. I know everybody knows Malachi Jones with Tulsa. It's kind of like their best player, but another guy that I like is Braylon Presley. But you're talking about a team that gave up almost 50 sacks last year. So I know they lost most of their defense as well. I think they're returning 5 starters on defense.
Yep.
Once again, a team that I just can't get there on, man. I just think there's a couple bottom dwellers in this league this year that we're going to see, and unfortunately, Tulsa's maybe one of them. But I think they got a star in Braylon Braxton for him, and so I'm really excited. It's actually one of the guys I have in my notes here that I'm really keyed on seeing this year.
I need to see some improvement in his accuracy, but yes, you're right. He is very athletic. He's very dynamic. So that could be good. They just lost a lot, man. They lost their number one wide receiver, who was number 5 in the country in yards last year. They're not experienced in the wide receiver group and really don't have a bona fide star. I just think, and you look at their schedule, man, they just have a tough schedule too. Like they have to go to FAU, to SMU, to Tulane, and to East Carolina. And the only conference home games they get is Temple, Rice, Charlotte, and North Texas. So
a name to listen for, though, on that Tulsa defense that only returns 5 starters, we say Kendarian Ray. From what I'm hearing, he's probably going to be one of the best safeties in the AAC. So little bright spot there, man. But with that schedule, that's murderer's row in this conference. So.
Yep, and then their non-conference, they got to go to Washington, and they get Oklahoma at home. So I mean, they got a brutal non-con schedule too to go along with a tough conference schedule. I definitely lean the under with Tulsa under 4.5. I think it's going to be a very difficult sledding for them. But I do like Kevin Wilson. I think he's eventually going to get this turned in the right direction. I just don't think it's going to start this season. Well, I mean, it'll start
Tulsa's
this season.
Actually a team last year that I guess it's kind of like the Seattle Mariners of baseball for me. I just wanted that team to be good last year. I lost a couple bets, won a couple bets on them covering some high spreads last year, but they just couldn't get there, man.
Yeah, I expected their defense to be a lot better than it was last year, and that's what really hurt. Their defense was not good. I remember I played them against Tulane thinking they were going to cover that spread, and Tulane ran for like 600 yards against them, dude.
Yeah,
I was like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go. I know you got Arkansas Pine Bluff, but you got to go to Washington, get beat up at home by Oklahoma.
Yep.
Then you got Temple at home. Then the fact that you got to go to FAU, SMU, Tulane, East Carolina, and play North Texas in the midst of all that, man.
Good luck. Good luck. All right, let's move over to before we get to Rice, who's also 4.5. We'll move over to UAB, who's at 4.5 here. Again, this is via BetMGM, so obviously you could shop around if you like the team, if you like them to go over or under. UAB, another first-year head coach here, coach coming in from high school, a coach with NFL experience, so in Trent Dilfer. So the one thing I will say about Trent Dilfer is I don't think recruiting is going to be an issue for him. I think that he's going to be able to recruit. I'm interested to see how the coaching aspect is going to go. Obviously, Trent Dilfer, he was the head of like the Elite 11, which is a quarterback high school recruiting competition. So he's very familiar with a lot of high school quarterback recruits, obviously. They did sign Isaiah Jacobs, who is the number 15th ranked running back in the country coming in this year. So we are seeing him already hit, good recruits already. Now is it going to translate, and how soon is it going to take to translate? Now, I don't think UAB is going to be that good this year, but what's your thoughts on UAB coming into this season?
Well, Trent Dilfer, he's probably going to run a more of a pro-style offense, I assume. Dwayne McBride, a name that they're going to miss tremendously last year. He got drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, actually.
Yep.
That team liked to run the ball last year, and something that not a lot of people talk about that I actually think plays a big role in bringing in a new head coach, especially one that doesn't have a lot of head coach experience. Just like any good football team, it starts up front with the line, and they lost 4 starters in their offensive line last year too. So, you kind of look at that to be their foundation, if you want to call it that. Their bread and butter. And anytime you lose 4 stars in offensive line, I saw it with UVA. If anybody doesn't follow the show, I'm a big UVA fan. Not looking forward to the season at all this year, but that's what happened last year to us. Lose guy to Michigan, lose guy to USC, and just get killed up front. So, anyways, name to watch though. Some pros about this team: Mac McWilliams. He might be one of the best DBs in the AAC this year. So excited to see him. But once again, a team that, man, tough sledding for them too. They've got to go to Tulane. Well, first they got to get beat up on at Georgia, right? And then you come off of getting beat up at Georgia. Then you got to go right to Tulane. Then you play South Florida. Then you got to go to UTSA. You got Memphis and FAU, which are 2 tough games. Nate, you got to go to Navy, and think what you want about the armed service academies, but nobody ever wants to go play the triple option, in mid-November, as cold as it is up there. And then you still got to go to North Texas. So that's a tough sledding for them.
And I think Temple's going to be improved as well. Temple actually might be the best defense in this conference, to be honest, which is something we'll talk about soon. But yeah, their schedule is brutal as well. And it's crazy. You mentioned Mac McWilliams, Fish McWilliams too, first team All-Conference USA last year on the defensive tackle. He's a future NFL player, so they definitely have talent on this team. It's just like you said, the offensive line. There's no depth to it, so if they get any injuries, they're basically screwed. And we just don't know what they're going to be. So it's going to be an interesting team to look out for. Like we basically said, like, there's a huge question mark at this point. You know what I mean? I know Trent Dilfer is going to be able to recruit here. Like, that's one thing he'll be able to do. But that's going to take time. And it's not going to help this year. All right. Your Rice. Now we can talk about Rice, AK. 4.5 games is their win total. You mentioned that JT Daniels transferred here. What's your overall thoughts on Rice? They're 5-8 last year. Mike Bloomgren, this is his 6th year here. What's your thoughts on Rice?
JT Daniels is just a guy that is just continuously disappointing me. They also get Luke McCaffrey, pretty big pickup for them as well. So I look for this offense to be okay. I think some improvement on defense would help, but once again, we're talking about a team that gives up almost 40 points a game last year. Yeah. And it's just so hard to change that overnight. But I do think this team, this was another team we talk about that kind of was a Tulsa to me last year. I looked for spots to play this team last year, and they just became so frustrating because they felt like they won games that they shouldn't have won, or were competitive in games they shouldn't have been competitive in, and then vice versa. But when you're looking at schedules, man, they got to start out on the road at Texas. They got to come home and play a tough Houston team. No matter what you think of Houston, I think they're going to be really tough this year. Still got to go to East Carolina, which is they got East Carolina at home. They still have to play Tulane, SMU, UTSA, and FAU 4 out of 5 weeks.
Yeah, brutal.
But I think the addition of Luke McCaffrey, JT Daniels, there's got to be some veteran presence there, I guess.
I mean, I think JT Daniels he's a solid quarterback. Last year with West Virginia, I think he was dealt a terrible hand. First of all, they couldn't stop anyone on defense, and then their offensive line play wasn't very good, so that really hurt JT Daniels there. It was an interesting choice though to transfer to Rice. I thought he could have transferred to like a bigger school. I definitely think this is gonna be Mike Bloomgren's best team. Now, whether they get 5 wins or not, that's to be determined. Because I'm with you. I definitely think they lose to Texas and Houston. So you start out 0-2 And then you got Texas Southern and USF. They should win those games. Maybe East Carolina. So then you're 3-2 right there. Connecticut, that's an up-and-coming team out there. They've been improving every year the last 2 years. And then at Tulsa, Tulane, SMU, UTSA, I mean, they could lose all 4 of those games. Maybe win Tulsa, but they got to go at Tulsa, and it's a Thursday nighter. So it's going to be an interesting schedule for them. I lean over, though, because they were 5-8 last year. This team's way better this year.
I do too, and I think their defense is going to be better too, with a pretty good offense. So I haven't really had a lean yet. This would be my first lean as well. I mean, I think getting to the bowl last year, Barron only took 5 wins for them to get to a bowl last year. That was huge for them, man. It's a team that hadn't been in the bowl in almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes when that happens, man, you kind of turn a corner and start on an uptick. So
agreed. Damn, Lou Bob just – oh, no, he's out. I thought he hit another home run there. I was like, damn. Dude be hitting jacks. All right, let's move over to Temple. 5.5 wins. So, again, we got 3 teams within the 5.5 win range here with this conference. Temple Owls, 5.5. I mean, this has been a dog shit team since Matt Rule left. They were 3-9 last year. Stan Drayton, this is his second year, but they did have some bright spots last year. And one of them was their quarterback, E.J. Warner. What's your thoughts on Temple coming into this season, AK?
Well, once again, you're talking about a team that gave up almost 40 points a game last year, 200 yards on the ground, but they returned 7 starters on the defensive side. They definitely miss Leighton Jordan, guy who transferred to Wisconsin. But when you return 7 starters, you look for that team to be on an uptick and improve on the defensive side of the ball. Man, you kind of nailed it. E.J. Warner, he's kind of an up-and-coming star of this conference, if you will. They're kind of a veteran team that's going to – me and you kind of talked off air, and you nailed it. So I'll let you talk more about that. But they may have the best defense in the conference. So when you're talking about improving that much, man, you got a good chance to win some ball games.
Yep, I really like their defense. Like you said, they're losing Varner to Wisconsin, but they returned 2 starters, and they're transferring in Jaquavian Mahoney from Kentucky and Alan Hay from Miami. So they are adding more talent and more experience. They only lose 1 linebacker in their unit, but they're returning all their starters, and they're adding DeJuan Black from Florida. And then they only lost 1 DB who only has 7 starts of experience. So they return everybody. So, I mean, this is a defense that, while they weren't good last year, they were young, and they're going to be more experienced this year. And they have a very talented linebacker group, in my opinion. They probably have the best linebacking group in this entire conference. So I'm definitely high on Temple. I definitely think their defense is going to be vastly improved. And if E.J. Warner can take another step in his development, I mean, the sky's the limit for Temple here.
I agree, man. And a breakout star, Ahmad Anderson Jr. I think that'll be a guy E.J. Warner will be throwing the ball to a lot this year. But I've been doing a lot of reading about this Temple team. About their offensive side, because everyone's kind of saying the same thing you are, man. Everybody expects a vast improvement on the defensive side. They're not going to have just probably the best tight end in the American Conference. They're going to have probably the best 1-2 punch at tight end, David Martin Robinson and Jordan Smith as well. So both of those guys probably will be NFL caliber guys at some point. So man, that you talk about a dark horse. We talked about some teams with Conference USA last year. Last week you were high on UTEP. This might be one of those teams, man, you look to spot at a great value and a great number.
Yeah, what's their conference title odds? I didn't even look. 3,400?
I found 40 plus 4,500 on DraftKings.
Yeah, DK does have 4,500. Caesars 2,800. BetMGM 3,000. Yeah, I mean, this might be one you just take a shot with, and if you get to the title game, you just hedge out.
Yep.
They returned 4 offensive linemen with starting experience, and this offensive line was terrible last year, so there's only one way to go, and that's up. It can't be worse than last year. So this is I think we're going to learn a lot with the Rutgers game, because Rutgers, obviously, it's a team very well coached. They should be a little bit improved this year as well. So if they win that Rutgers game, I think that's going to set the tone for their season. They get Miami at home too, Miami, Florida, which is interesting. Like, if they win that game too, like, they could very well start out the gate 4-0, and then they go to Tulsa, right? So, if they start 4-0, they're easily going to go over their win total because they only need to win 2 games out of Tulsa, UTSA, North Texas, SMU, Navy, USF, UAB, and Memphis. They get Memphis at home, they get SMU at home, and they get UTSA at home. So they could probably pull an upset in one of those games. I'm intrigued by Temple this year, man, and it's not often we say that. This has been a team that, like I said, it's been like an easy fade team the last few years. So I'm excited.
Ever since Matt Rule.
Yep. Ever since Matt Rule left.
I'll even further your point even more, Jordan, man. I think it starts in game 1 against Akron. I know we haven't talked about the MAC yet, but I'm kind of leaning. I liking this Akron team a little bit. We'll get to that. I think DJ Irons coming back, and that team's tough. I think that team's going to take a step forward this year. So I think we're going to see what kind of team this team is when they play Akron week 1. I'm excited for that game.
Yeah, that should be a good one. Akron could be good, but I still think Toledo's the favorite in that division. They're going to be tough.
Oh yeah, no. Akron's win total is only 3 or 3.5, depending on what you're shopping at. So, but I think there's going to be some spots to back Akron a lot this year. Anyways, we'll talk about that when the MAC comes. But that's actually a game I've got circled September 2nd that I'm actually excited about. That's probably flying underneath the radar.
Yep, very much so. All right, let's move over to North Texas, who was 7-7 last year. They have another first-year head coach in Eric Morris. This is his first FBS job as well. So obviously all new coaching staff. Eric Morris, he was the former head coach of Incarnate Word. He was the offensive coordinator of Washington State last year. And they had what's his face at quarterback. Why is his name?
Austin Ooney.
No, Washington State, who was the former quarterback at Incarnate Word. Why is his name slipping my mind? Cam Ward.
Cam Ward, yes, yeah.
So he's bringing that air raid style offense to North Texas. Now, North Texas used to be an air raid style offense as well when what's his face was there. Graham Harrell was the offensive coordinator there. So they're kind of going back to their roots here. They're returning 8 starters on offense and 7 on defense. What's your outlook on North Texas and their win total at 5.5?
North Texas has always been a tough football team for years now. It's just one of those teams that's just kind of always relevant.
The green.
What Eric Morris did at Incarnate Ward was very impressive, man. I've kind of followed that team. I've got some guys that play some FCS stuff, and they seem to always be liking those guys. I don't know anything about the FCS, so I just seem to always take the information and apply it where need be. But you're talking about a team that, is going to return a lot of starters, some veteran presence, a team that scored almost 35 points a game last year. Is it Chandler Rogers? I haven't got that confirmation yet at quarterback this year from Louisiana Monroe transfer. That's probably who's going to be quarterbacking for him.
Yep.
Anytime a team returns 8 starters and 7 starters on both sides of the ball, it's got a chance to win some ball games. I was looking at their schedule earlier as well, and they start off with a very winnable game against Cal. They have a very winnable game against FIU, a winnable game against Louisiana Tech, and a winnable game against Abilene Christian. So kind of how you're thinking with Temple, you got a chance to start 4-0 here. With North Texas or 3-1. You play a winnable game, you go up and handle the triple option against Navy. You do got to play Tulane on the road, but then you get UTSA, Memphis at home, and UAB at home, and then you play at Tulsa. So it's winnable ball games, man. Anytime you've going to a new system, new coach, all those things, we talk about it all the time. There's some things that you just have to wait and see what happens. So might be a good spot to hop on a team here, though. I actually kind of like this North Texas team coming into the year.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a decent team. I'm sorry, I had their win total wrong. It's 6.5, not 5.5.
And around 25-1 to win the conference. Yeah, but I actually it's one of my leans of the show. I actually leaned over 6.5.
Yeah, I mean they do have a favorable schedule. They get Temple at home, Memphis at home, UTSA at home, UAB at home. They do have to go to SMU and to Tulane, and to Navy, which is 3 tough games. I think a lot of this is going to have to rely on their defense too. I know they returned 7 starters, but they don't have a lot of depth on defense. And they're switching to a 3-3-5 this year. So they're moving their best defensive lineman to outside linebacker, Mason Richards. He was second team All Conference USA last year. And then they lose their two best defensive backs last year, in Sean Thomas Faulkner and Deshaun Gady. So, I mean, they have a lot of inexperience on the defense, even though they're returning 7 starters. And they lost their best linebacker in Katie Davis. So, yeah, they're returning 7 starters, but, I mean, they lost a good portion of, like, their best defense. So, I'm not as high on them as you, AK. But I could see them if they get out to a good start. Like, they could definitely do it. I mean, there's just a lot of
I feel like
question marks.
I just feel like if you go between Cal, FIU, Louisiana Tech, Abilene Christian, and Navy, you can somehow start, 4-1. There's 3 winnable games there between UAB, Tulsa. SMU is going to fall on their face at some point this year, I think, and even Temple. So it's not something I've gotten to the window on yet. It's just a lean, but I do lean the over 6.5 here.
Yeah, I think like I said, a lot has to do with, I think, health for them, dude. They got to stay healthy, especially on defense. So we'll see what happens. I know Eric Morse is going to have a good offense. He's had a good offense everywhere he went. And I think having such a soft schedule in the beginning, that kind of sets him up nicely to, like, kind of go through some growing pains. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm not hella down on them, but I'm not as high on them as you. All right, let's move over to Navy, whose win total is 5.5. The midshipmen, they have a new coach in Brian Newberry. Also, keep in mind the new chop block rules are going to affect the academies in the triple option. Brian Newberry has said at various points in this offseason that Navy is going to throw the ball a lot more than they ever have. So we are expecting kind of a new offense, which makes handicapping this team a little difficult, in my opinion. But I do think their defense is going to be really good. But what's your outlook on Navy?
I still think they're a team that's going to line up and try to run the ball down your throat. Brian Newberry's been Navy's defensive coordinator for some time now, so
yep.
There's some familiarity there already. I understand, it's not hard to say you're going to throw the ball a lot when you throw the ball 5 to 6 times a game, and you might line up and throw the ball 10 or 12 times a game, right? I still think they're going to stick to the principles, man. I'm going to not say his name right, but Fofana, the fullback from last year, I think he had like almost 900 yards last year. They bring him back. Navy kind of caught a break with the schedule too. It seems like the theme of the show was talking about schedules, but they kind of caught a break here because they avoid UTSA and Tulane this year on the schedule, which is very interesting.
Yep.
I think they open up at Notre Dame, and I think the look ahead line's like 20 or 21 right now. And I've got some sharp friends of mine that have already taken Navy like plus 21, thinking that's going to be a game that they can cover the spread there. It's hard to bet against some of these service academy teams, man. We've talked about it before. I remember when UVA played Navy in a bowl about 6 years ago, and everybody's like, man, we finally made it to a bowl, yada, yada, yada. We go up there, we run the opening kickoff back for a touchdown, and then we get beat like 49-7 just because no 19-year-old kid wants to prepare for that triple option attack. So,
yep.
They've got to figure some things out as far as what their identity is going to be. Is it going to be the triple option attack? We're going to try to line up and throw the ball some more, but they still get nine starters back on the defensive side of the ball too, which is huge, especially based on their defensive coordinator still there. There's the head coach now.
Yeah, I think their defense is going to be good. They're losing John Marshall and Nicholas Straw, who are arguably two of their best defensive players last year, but they do return their entire defensive line, and they held opponents to 89 rush yards per game, 3 yards per carry last year. So I think that's very beneficial for Navy here. And they returned their entire secondary, which only allowed 250 yards per game in the air last year. So I think their defense is going to be pretty stout. I am interested to see their offense. I know Newberry's been talking about throwing the ball more. I'm interested to see if they do that. And I'm also interested to see how the new chop block rule is going to affect teams like Navy. Maybe it won't. Maybe it will. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's
So
move
here's
on.
the interesting thing about Grant.
Go ahead.
Before you, so Grant Chestnut, their new offensive coordinator, he comes over from Kennesaw State, which we talked some about them last week. Coming in next year, but he ran a triple option style offense there. So once again, the familiarity is there. I'm just briefly been looking at like what his teams did as far as throwing the ball, because I've heard the comments too about wanting to spread them out more and throw the ball and yada yada yada. For instance, his team last year threw for 1,300 yards. So obviously he's going to throw the ball some more. I'd look to see some triple option looks, some pop passes off of there, things like that. Usually when you have a triple option team that throws the ball a little bit, I've seen it with like Air Force over the years. You line them up 3 yards, cloud of dust, and then all you do is show the same look, and you got somebody across the middle going wide open. So, hey, let them air it out a little bit more. I still think this is a team nobody wants to prepare for.
Yeah, I was gonna say it could look something similar to Air Force's offense when all is said and done. By the way, Tampa Bay walked off. They didn't walk off Arizona, but they didn't score any runs until the top of the ninth tonight and win 3-2.
Arizona's bullpen, man.
McCuff or whatever his name is, dude, blew the fucking game. All right, let's move over to our last 5.5 win total team here. This is the East Carolina Pirates. East Carolina was 8-5 last year. They're only returning 10 starters, 4 on offense, 6 on defense here. This is Mike Houston's 5th year. What's your kind of feeling out of East Carolina this year?
Well, losing Holden Ehlers, who was felt like a 50-year starter there, that always hurts. They had a good offense last year. Keaton Mitchell was pretty decent running back. I'm hearing a lot of good things about Mason Garcia, though. I'm seeing a lot of chatter about his athleticism online. It's definitely going to be offense. It's going to be a little bit in transition. You kind of said it about, who they return and who they don't return, but they're going to need their defense to step up. Defense was 6th in scoring. They averaged about 28 points in the AAC last year. So, it's a little misconceiving, though. They only allowed 27.2 points per game. They allowed almost 7 yards per game last year. So a little volatile there, man. Not a team that I'm very high on, but I do have Mason Garcia as a guy that I have tabbed as I want to keep my eye on, because they say his athleticism is remarkable.
Yeah, and they're also losing a lot of their good defenders. They lose Malik Fleming, who was 2nd team all-conference last year, defensive back. They do return their entire defensive line, which is good, but they do lose all of their linebackers from last year. So a lot of unfamiliarity there. And then also their offensive line, they lose 4 starters from their offensive line. They only return a total of 80 career starts to their offensive line. My thinking of this is, while Mason Garcia may be good, it's not a good look to have a young, inexperienced offensive line along with a young, inexperienced quarterback. That could be a recipe for disaster, which kind of worries me with this team. I actually like the under here. They're going to Michigan, then they get Marshall at Appalachian State, which is a tough game. Gardner Webb at Rice, which they could possibly lose. SMU at home. Charlotte at home for their homecoming game, at UTSA. Then they get Tulane at home, at FAU, at Navy, and then Tulsa to close it out.
Yeah, they also lost one of the best corners in the AAC last year, Malik Fleming. That's a huge loss for them. But losing a veteran quarterback that's been there forever, man, that just hurts right off the jump. Yep. It feels like East Carolina is always one of those teams that's relevant, but I think they're just a team in transition right now. And as you mentioned, they got to play Murderers Row, UTSA, Tulane, SMU. They didn't dodge any of those guys this year, so tough sled for them to start on the road in Michigan. That's always always a tough way to get going in the year too.
Yep, 100% agree. I actually like their under. I don't think they're gonna win 5 games, 5 max. All right, let's talk about the Florida Atlantic Owls, who were 5-7 last year. Their win totals at 7.5 this year. They have first year head coach here, Tom Herman, who's 54-22 as a head coach in his career. He returned 8 offensive starters, 10 defensive starters, the most experienced team in this conference. What's your thoughts here on FAU?
Jordan, I can't wait to hear you break down this team because I know you've got some opinions on this team. But getting Casey Thompson was huge. I know we have a little group text, and Irv, who everybody knows on the show, wasn't necessarily as high on this team as I know you are. But I like Casey Thompson a lot. I think this team is I think they're down to returning 8 stars on the defensive side of the ball. I know Taya Young just transferred to Ole Miss, but still returning that many starters on defense is huge, man. And their schedule starting out. I know they got to play at Clemson on the 3rd game, but if we can steamroll through Monmouth, beat Ohio, play Clemson tough, they got a chance to beat Illinois and then be sitting at 3-1 going to the conference play, which would be huge for this team.
Yeah, I agree. And I think their conference schedule breaks nicely for them because they get UTSA and Tulane at home, and then they dodge SMU. So they don't even got to worry about them, and they dodge Memphis. Yep. So of the 5 best teams in this conference, they don't have to play 2 of them, and the other 2 they get to play at home, which I think is huge for them. I think, I know people have opinions on Tom Herman because he didn't necessarily succeed at Texas, but, we were talking before the show. He didn't succeed to Texas standards. He didn't have a losing season in his entire tenure there. He was 4-0 in bowl games. But the fact that he underperformed in Big 12 play and didn't win the Big 12 year in and year out and playing for national championships, everyone thinks this dude sucks. He was great at Houston. He was good at Texas. And the guy knows football, dude. And he's going to get a lot better production out of these guys than Willie Taggart did. I can promise you that. I think getting Casey Thompson is huge because he's a veteran quarterback. He's someone that understands the system. And, he wasn't the issue at Nebraska last year, in my opinion. Nebraska had a lot better issues. They also returned Larry McCammon, who last year was first-team All-Conference USA running back. So that's very beneficial as well. Their defensive line, very stout. They return all 4 of their starters. They return 2 starters, and they add Desmond Tittle from Auburn and Ja'Cory Hammett from who's one of the top JUCO transfers to their linebacking core. They lose 1 safety in Taja Young, but they return everybody else in the defensive backfield. I mean, this is a team that's going to be very experienced here. And the one thing that I could say about college football is experience matters. It definitely matters. And like I said, the schedule breaks in their favor. Even if they start the year 2-2, they lose to Clemson and Illinois. And I don't expect Illinois to be as good as they were last year. So it's definitely a winnable game. But even if they did go 2-2, the conference schedule breaks their way. You know what I mean? Like, if they only lose 1 conference game, they could very well be in the conference title game.
You can still get Florida Atlantic at 9-1 some places, Jordan, but this thing is dropping quick. So I think you're all over this one. It's dropped to like 6-1 at a lot of books. So if you're looking to hop on this, man, I'd hop on that 9-1 quick.
Yeah, get in now. Yeah, I'm seeing DraftKings 650, Caesars 750, FanDuel 9-1. So yeah, I think it's a good play. I like their over too. I definitely see 8 wins. Like Monmouth, Ohio wins, and like I said, Clemson, Illinois. Even if they lose both those games, you're 2-2. Win against Tulsa, win against USF. That's 4 wins right there. UTSA at home, coin flip. At Charlotte, at UAB, both winnable games. That's 6 wins. East Carolina at home, 7 wins. Tulane, 8 wins at home, and at Rice.
I think it's huge, man. I think you're all over it.
Look, I like this FAU team. All right, let's talk about Memphis, who's also at 7.5 wins. This is the team that you're high on. 6-1 to win the conference. Over or under 7.5 wins. Ryan Silverfield, 5th year here. Last year he was 7-6 here, and they did have some things break against them. They had a couple of bad beats too. What's your thoughts on Memphis here?
So first things first, when looking at this Memphis team, you're right. 7.5 is what I got it at. I actually have played this 7.5. I got it minus 140 and minus 150 at 7.5. But at some of the legal books, you're looking at 8 and 8.5. I know MGM and I think it's FanDuel I was looking at already has 8.5. And a couple other places was saying 8. So man, if you want to grab the 7.5, I think the 7.5 is a very key number. I'll get to that in a second. Ryan Silverfield has had this Memphis team in 3 straight bowls, but it's definitely, it feels like it's a make or break year. Kind of had some higher expectations last year. They go 3.5, 3-5 in the AAC last year. They were on the wrong side of a couple bad ball bounces, but hey, you got to find a way to win those games if you're going to be a good program. So I think getting Silverfield in a position where he needs to win and knows he does, I think there's going to be a sense of urgency there. Seth Hennigan, I think, is one of the best quarterbacks in the AAC, if not the best quarterback in the AAC. Huge pickup for them. Old Dominion, Blake Watson, running back, but they have 2 or 3 other running backs that could be starting on any AAC team as well. They're loaded there. Wide receivers this year, I think Joseph Skates, who averaged almost 23 yards a reception last year, is going to have a breakout year this year. I think they're going to find a way to get him the ball. They only returned 5 starters on defense. I know they only allowed 5 yards per play last year, which when we've been talking about 6, 7, yards per play, that sounds pretty good. But they did give up almost 30 points a game. So they've got some transfers that I know they're going to plug and play right away there. But the biggest thing I think this offense is going to take another step forward. I think Seth Hennigan is a guy that can throw for 4,000 yards, but I think you're going to see a team that didn't run the ball a lot last year really try to come up and run the ball this year with all these running backs, take the pressure off of Hennigan. And let's just face it, man, their schedule just breaks the right way for them. Bethune-Cookman is a winnable game. I know Arkansas State played them tough for 3 quarters last year, but that's a winnable game for them. You saw what happened when they played Navy last year. Navy could not stop Hennigan at all last year. He just threw the ball over the yard for him last year. Missouri is a winnable game, and that's a game that Silverfield, as a group of 5 program, has got to go in there on a neutral field because they play in that game at St. Louis and beat Missouri. That's a game that Silverfield, to take the next step, is going to have to come in there and win. They could easily start out 4-0 right there.
Yep.
They have a tough game against Boise State, who's going to be good, and I like Boise State this year, so that's a tough game. But that's at home, and they get Tulane coming at home. So, okay, let's get away with 1 win out of those 2, right? We're sitting at 5-1. Go on the road to UAB, which is a winnable game. Go on the road to North Texas, which could be a potential letdown game, but we're still 6-2 coming out of that. Come back home against South Florida, go to Charlotte. Those are 2 winnable games. We're sitting at 8-2. SMU and Temple, if we come away with one of those, we finish at 9-3. So, even if you drop one of those games, you're still at 8-4. Hence what I said at the beginning of the segment about it's 7.5 is a very key number here. I would not play this anything over 7.5. 8 maybe, but 7.5 is a key number here. I would not get attached to those 8.5s that are out there already. So 7.5 key number here. Best bet for the show, best bet for the college football season. Memphis over 7.5 wins.
Woo. We got to veer real quick. Domingo Herman 3 outs away from a perfect game.
Yep. I've been following it, but I didn't want to say anything.
Unbelievable, dude. And the A's have the longest streak of not getting no hit in Major League Baseball. I think it's been like 20-something years since they've been no hit. So interesting to keep their eye on. Hopefully they get a hit here. I like your breakdown of Memphis. I could see them winning 8 games for sure. I do agree their schedule definitely breaks their way, only having to play SMU, and then they dodge UTSA. They dodge they got to play Tulane though.
Yep. At home.
Yeah, they get them at home, which is beneficial, and they get SMU at home too, which is which is huge as well. So I think you're onto something here. I'm gonna
And
leave
if
it.
anybody goes back and watches that Tulane game last year, if anybody remembers, Tulane jumped up 35-0. Memphis could have just packed it in. They ran the ball all over the field on him. Tajay Spears did. He runs for 125 yards in like the first half, I'm pretty sure. 150 yards in the first half. And they came out, man, and showed fight in the third and fourth quarter and almost came back and won the game after being down 35-0. It was one of those that they just ran out of time with. If there's 6 more minutes on the clock, Memphis is coming back because Memphis came out in the second half and Tulane could not stop them at all. So best believe Silverfield has that game circled on his calendar right now, saying that's a game. We get them at home this year. We're not letting them jump out 35-0 on us. That's a game that I could definitely see Memphis winning.
Yeah, they had a lot of bad breaks last year, man. That SMU game too, they lost on a last-second touchdown. I mean, there was a lot of bad breaks for them.
Actually, a lot of us were on Houston in the Friday night game earlier in the season when Memphis was up. I can't remember the score, but I'm going to say it was something like 28-7 in the fourth quarter. And Houston gets like 2 onside kicks and comes back and runs it off on a 2-point conversion on them, like 33-32, I think was the final score of that game. So some bad breaks. And that's when you talk about taking the next step and winning ball games and being a winning program. Those are the games Silverfield has to close out and win this year. And that's the difference in being a 7-win team last year and an 8 or 9-win team this year.
Agreed. Good stuff there. All right, let's move over to the Tulane Green Wave. Their win total this year, or hold on, before we get to Tulane, let's go UTSA, which is also at 7.5. UTSA
Mingo did it. He threw the no-hitter, by the way.
Yeah, he threw a perfect game.
Perfect game, yep. Good for him.
A's were they had the longest streak of not getting no-hit in Major League Baseball, and that is over.
Yep.
Tough stuff. All right, UTSA Roadrunners. Obviously, this is the Conference USA champion from a year ago. This is Jeff Traylor's 4th year as head coach. He returns a very experienced team, including one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Frank Harris. They do have a new offensive coordinator in Justin Burke. What's your outlook on UTSA this year?
UTSA is a team that we kind of talked about some last week. They kind of owned Conference USA for years, and that's where I see Western Kentucky now has kind of been that 1B, if you will. The guy right below him. I expect Western Kentucky to take that leap now, but it took UTSA leaving the conference for them to do that. So Frank Harris coming back is huge for them. Talking about a team that's gone 23-5 over the last 2 years and returns 16 starters. It's huge. I think it's going to be a little bit of a transition. They got a new offensive coordinator, and losing oh my gosh, hold on, let me look at my notes. The receiver, Zachary Franklin went to Ole Miss. That's a little bit of a blow. That was Frank Harris's big target last year. But hey, I still think you got a team that's going to compete for the conference this year. When I made the comment about I'm okay going against UTSA, is you got a team coming into the conference. That's always a tough transition too, and maybe they come back to that reality a little bit. We saw what happened in that bowl game last year. We talked about that on the show a little bit last week. So maybe you saw a little foreshadowing there of what's to come when they run into a team that actually plays defense, because that Troy defense was actually very good last year, who they ran into in that bowl.
Yeah, that Troy defense was good. So we'll see what comes of that. But I do like this UTSA team. I know they lost Zachary Franklin, but they do return 3 of their top 4 receivers from last year, and they lost 2 starters on their offensive line, but they return 5 guys with starting experience, and they add 3 JUCO transfers. So this offensive line should be deep as it was last year. I know Jeff Traylor's been on record saying that he feels like this is his deepest offensive line that he's ever had. On defense, they only lose 1 starter on their defensive line, and they return 6 defensive linemen with starting experience, including Joseph Evans, who's a transfer from LSU, and Nick Booker Brown from NC State, who was hurt last year, who's very talented as well. So I'm interested to see how those guys impact the defense. I do think that, they did lose a lot of they lost 2 DBs who were first-team all-conference last year, which is a huge loss. So I am concerned about their defense, but I know with Frank Harris, I'm not, he'll be able to make up for that because he's going to be able to score, you know what I mean? So I am down on them. I don't think they're going to win this conference, though. I agree with you there. I think 7.5 wins is about right because the schedule doesn't break their way in terms of
Well, kinda.
But they got to go.
It does.
They got to go 2
They avoid
Tulane,
SMU.
2 FAU. That's the thing.
They avoid SMU and Memphis, though, who, we're kind of talking about is that based on the odds, that 3 and 4 team, when that's kind of who you look for upsets. But man, we're gonna see what kind of team they are first week against Houston, and
they almost beat Houston last year.
Yep, and then they got to go to Tennessee too. So we'll see what kind of team they are. And hey, that first game of the conference against Temple, we're going to see who they are too against a really tough Temple defense too.
Yep, I'm interested to see that game. That'll tell a lot about. I could tell a lot about both teams for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I'm with you though. I don't think UTSA is going to win this conference. People are think they're going to run away with this conference. I don't see it at all.
If you listen to anybody on Twitter, everybody in the world is on UTSA to win this conference. So, what me and you talk about all the time when the whole world's on somebody.
Oh yeah, it never happens, dude.
Doesn't usually end too well for them
at all. All right, let's move over to SMU, whose win totals at 7.5 as well. Obviously, they lose Tanner Mordecai, their starting quarterback. This is Rhett Lashley's second year here. Kind of disappointing year last year. A lot of people thought they were going to be a lot better than 7-6. What's your outlook on SMU?
I lost a lot of money on SMU last year. I'm being honest. Losing Mordecai was big, but losing Rasheed Rice was huge.
Yeah.
Good point. He was a monster. Still had a team that averaged almost 40 points a game scoring. So I thought it was pretty interesting. They got 5 offensive linemen from Power 5 reeled in from the transfer portal. So that's huge for them, man. This is a team that definitely on paper can compete with the UTSAs of the world, the Memphises of the world, the Tulanes of the world. I know they got a huge transfer from TCU too, but man, I've got to see it. It's one of those things. Last year they disappointed me so bad when it's so hard to back a team immediately after what they did last year. It's almost impossible for me to do that. So got to see it on paper. I know a lot of people are on Preston Stone to kind of have a breakout year. He's a breakout candidate, but once again, man, they got to put it together on paper. And that defense last year couldn't stop me and you at quarterback. So they struggled really bad. I remember. I think it was the Navy game last year where we kind of just watched Navy. I think it was Navy just run them down the field on them with the triple option. So they got to be able to do that for me to be a believer. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean they did address their defensive line, like you said. They gave up 204 yards rushing per game, which is fucking atrocious. You give up 204 rushing yards per game, you're not going to win very many ball games. But they did go out and they added transfers from Miami, Jordan Miller and Elijah Roberts, and then they also added Corey Robertson from Oklahoma is a 300-pound nose tackle, so that's going to be huge in stopping the run as well. I just think Preston Stone may be the real deal. People are saying that he is the real deal, and I think SMU's season basically tinkers on that. If Preston Stone comes in and he's better than Tanner Mordecai was in his tenure at SMU, I mean I think this could be a team that could potentially win the AAC, right? But if he has any struggles, and I think that having a stout offensive line is going to benefit him. This may be the best offensive line in the conference. That could be beneficial. So I think it all hinges on Preston Stone's shoulders, man. I really do, and I think 7.5 wins is just about right. They got to go to Oklahoma, Louisiana Tech. That's a tough game at TCU. Man, their conference schedule is pretty favorable though.
Charlotte, they avoid UTSA.
And they avoid FAU.
Yep. They get North Texas at home. They got to go on the road against Memphis. Like I said, that's a game I think Memphis wins.
And they got to go to Temple.
To Temple, yep. And to East Carolina, which is never a gimme by any means. So
yeah. So I mean, we'll see, but I'm interested. I'm intrigued by SMU. I'll put it that way. Like, I'm not extremely high on them. I'm very intrigued by them. I think this could be a really good team, and I could also see this being a team similar to last year, where they just struggled to win games. But I do think they are.
Yeah, they were so frustrating last year. They couldn't cover spread. It felt like to save their life.
No.
I remember being on them. I think it was the TCU game. I think they went up on TCU early, and then TCU just came storming back, and they never had a chance after that. But I think it was the UCF game. It was one of those weird like Wednesday, college football games or Thursday college football games, and they go up early on UCF, and then UCF just ran the ball down their throat in the second half, and just turned into an ugly slot fest. And that's when I was like, man, I hate this SMU team. Like, this team is so good. Kind of like the St. Louis Cardinals of baseball.
Yep.
This team should be good, and they just were not. And sometimes we just got to accept it, man.
Yep. I very much recall that UCF game because I'm pretty sure I forget who UCF's quarterback was, but I'm pretty sure he had like 200 yards rushing. They just kept running a fucking quarterback option the entire second half, dude. They couldn't stop it.
Yeah. I think it was I think Isaiah Bowser was the running back for UCF, and they just ran up and down the freaking field. It was just so like frustrating, and that's when I was like, man, I can't stand this team anymore.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's move over to the last team. We got the Tulane Green Wave. A lot of people are very high on this team. They overperformed last year, 12-2 on the season with a nice Cotton Bowl win against my USC Trojans. Their win total this year is 9.5. Last year it was 2.5. That's what their total was. So total, I mean, just polar opposite of last year's expectations, right? I like Willie Fritz. He's a very nice coach. What do you think? Before I get to my opinion on this team,
sometimes when expectations flip like that, like you go from a team that's projected to win 2 or 3 or 4 games, and then in a year, hey, it's very impressive. Like I said at the beginning of the show, what they did in that turnaround, I don't know if we ever see that kind of turnaround again, going from winning 2 games to, what was it? They won 12 games last year. So that's impressive, man. Shout out, to them. I think they overperformed some. Tajay Spears and the way they were able to run the ball. But hey, that goes back to what they got. They returned most of their offensive line this year. So hey, they're going to be tough again. They got a bunch of backs there too that can replace Tajay Spears. Maybe it's not to that level, but they'll do it by committee. As you said, they probably got the best offensive line in the AAC. Some things that I think is when you have such high expectations, when you've come from here, it usually middles out. And what I mean by that is you don't necessarily come to reality, but reality is you become an 8-win team, a 9-win team. It's hard to replicate that success. And let's be honest, man, they start out against South Alabama, who is not a bad team at all. Then they got to play Ole Miss, who is not a bad team at all. So I think we're going to see what kind of team Tulane is real quick. And here's the thing, man. They've got to play UTSA. They do get UTSA at home, but they've got to go to Florida Atlantic. They've got to go to East Carolina. They got to play North Texas. They've got to go to Memphis, and they got to play UAB.
Yep.
Schedule's definitely a little tough for them this year. I know everyone is expecting, and they're betting Tulane and UTSA like the season's already been played, but everyone's expecting them the conference, standings to come down to that last game probably, but I'm not so sure that happens, man. So like I said, Michael Pratt, probably one of the best group of 5 quarterbacks, coming back. Some people may say he's one of the best Power 5 guys too. He probably could go there and play, but I think there's some regression coming from him as well. A lot of that offense was set up with being able to run the ball, so it's going to depend on them being able to run the ball off of Tajay Spears, play action, things like that. Do feel like that takes a step back as well. It's not that I'm not high on this Tulane team at all. I think they're going to be a great football team again, but definitely think they come back to a little reality.
Agreed. I definitely think they come back to reality a little bit. And Michael Pratt, for as good of a quarterback as he is, he's not a great passer. Only 57% completion percentage, which isn't very good. He's a better runner than he is a passer. So I'm interested to see if he can develop more as a passer this year. I think that'll definitely help this offense evolve. I'm with you. I think their defensive line is really good. They return basically their entire defensive line. I know Caleb Williams kind of shredded their defense up, but he's a different animal, dude. He's definitely a different animal. And in a conference
What a
play,
wild game to watch. That game was crazy.
yeah, fuck that game. But I mean, their defense, they held conference opponents, basically under 20 points all year long. So I do think that's beneficial. But I mean, you are getting better offensive teams in this conference this year. Like, I think FAU's obviously going to be much more improved. Obviously, UTSA is a great offensive team. So I am interested to see if Tulane's going to be able to hold up, because the performance against USC was not the same defense we saw all year long. Like, USC put up a gazillion yards against them, but again, that's USC. But is that more of the defense we saw last year, or is it going to be that defense we saw in conference play a year ago? So I am interested. I'm in agreement with you. Like, I definitely think Tulane deserves to be the favorite in this conference. I think they are the best team in this conference, but that doesn't mean the best team doesn't always win the conference every year. You know what I mean? So
also, too, a little side note on Michael Pratt. He lost his 2 top receivers last year as well.
Yep.
Shea White and Deuce Watts. So it's always something that I look at. I think it has a lot to do with, can they replace Tajay Spears? I know they think they got a collection of backs to do it. And it's going to be, can they set up the play action? Can they set up Michael Pratt on the move some? And we'll see. But definitely got a tough schedule in the conference as well.
Agreed. Going to be an interesting and fun conference, the AAC this year. All right.
Let's go, y'all.
So we already know your best bet. Memphis over 7.5, right?
Yep.
AK, Memphis over 7.5. Where's my pen? So I can write
and
this down.
just for the sake of the show, it's not a best bet at all, but I'm in agreement on Temple having a pretty good year.
Let's go. All right, I'm on FAU plus 900 to win the conference, and then I'm gonna get to the window with Temple over 5.5 wins. I like that. Temple over 5.5. Do I like that, or do I like? Yeah, I think I like that. Kind of like North Texas under 6.5 too. But we'll go Temple over 5.5. It's gonna be our best bet there. All right, y'all. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. We'll be back next week. We got CT bets on. We're doing what conference are we doing next week?
Big 12.
We're doing Big 12 next week, so we're gonna get into our first Power 5 conference. Doing the Big 12. We'll probably have Irv back too, hopefully. So it should be a good show. Make sure to go to devour.com or download the Devour app straight to your mobile device and use promo code TAPROOM for $10 off your first purchase of $25 or more. Make sure to go to our YouTube, youtube.com/@taproomsports. Like, subscribe, get notified when we go live. Twitch.tv/taproomsports. Subscribe over there as well. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. AK and I will be back on Friday night to talk some baseball for Saturday. Rough day for me today as the Diamondbacks blow the game in the 9th. Cardinals blow the game in the 8th. Fuck both those teams. For AK, you can follow him on Twitter @AKSports90. You can follow myself @JordanRulesTSP. We'll catch y'all later. Have a beautiful, blessed night. We'll see y'all Friday. Peace.